passion and fulfillment in your relationship come out of commitment. Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
We'll get started right after this message.
If you want to learn how to experience the best, most fulfilling year of your marriage, we invite you to order Matthew's new book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. You can get it at Amazon.com or visit Matthew's website, www.matthewphoffman.com. Again, that's Amazon.com or www.matthewphoffman.com. And now, back to the show.
Are you tired of feeling like you and your partner are drifting apart? Do you want to reignite that spark and keep your love life honeymoon hot? First and foremost, communication is key. It's important to have open and honest conversations about your desires and boundaries in order to establish a strong foundation for intimacy. From there, you can explore different activities and techniques that fulfill both you and your partner's needs and wants. Join Kim and me along with one of our Elite KCN coaches as we explore the secrets to creating an intimate bond that will last a lifetime. Chris Cambas is an Elite KCN coach who is committed to assisting couples in strengthening their bonds through cutting-edge processes and therapeutic methods. Through intensives, retreats, seminars, and online workshops, he has helped over 30,000 people through the in-person and tele-health marriage counseling he co-founded. He graduated from Liberty University with a master's degree and possesses undergraduate and graduate degrees from the University of Tampa. He is also a Certified Gottman Trainer and a Certified Gottman Method Couples Therapist. Whether you're a newlywed or seasoned couple, this discussion will have something for everyone. So grab a glass of wine, light some candles, and get ready to take your relationship to new heights. Welcome back, everybody, to the Kick-Ass Couples Podcast. We are excited to be back with you in Phoenix, our Airstream here in Maine. A little dark and cloudy out there behind us, but it's not dampening our soul or our spirit because we're talking. We're doing a recap episode today on intimacy. How do you have red hot intimacy? Ooh, and I see the little smile appearing on my wife's face when I said red hot.
We've talked a lot about intimacy, but this title is a red hot intimacy.
That's right, baby.
We're going to go a little deeper.
A little deeper. It's the only way to fly. And we had my co-author, Chris Cambas, on this episode, and he's a ninja when it comes to couples and counseling and intimacy. He trains trainers. He's had 30,000 hours of training and seen 20,000 people. I mean, I love this guy. He's the author of our book together, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. And this episode, if you have not listened to it and you want to know the steps, the roadmap, and all the stuff you got to do to get your relationship to red hot, who doesn't want that, Kim?
It is mandatory within a relationship. It is, a definite.
It's the only way to fly. And, one of the things that I loved most, one of my big takeaways from this episode with Chris is he said, we all think it's about the sex and intimacy. Sex is one way, and we've discussed at least half a dozen other ways to get to intimacy. And he said, let's pull back from the whole sex component. He goes, people get married because it's the next thing to do. They think it's like, oh, it's time for us to do this, and so we should do it. Then they have kids because it's the next thing to do. And then they get down the road, but they have not thought about, Kim, the magnitude and the commitments that they're making. And then life just bulldozes them over right by. And they get into this crisis and they say, man, this is hard and I'm not happy because they haven't backed up and thought about what they're getting into and the magnitude and how important it is. I think Chris was kind of just saying, you know what? If you haven't had those conversations before you got into it, then you got to have them now and talk about the magnitude of the commitment. And it's about the relationship. So I'm going to give you the view of the end. If you want to have that red hot intimacy, you got to back up and work on the relationship and the commitment first.
Yeah, we have to build great relationships. We really need to commit to each other and to commit to taking care of our relationship. It's not motivation, Chris said. It's a discipline. It's a day in and day out, active, intentional discipline and decision to put your spouse first. Then you reap the benefit of that work and you get to red hot intimacy.
Yeah, you got to have the discipline to do the work in the relationship.
Absolutely.
So it's all the pre-work, right? I mean, when you see a performance, Kim, you go to a play, you go to a show, and you're like, wow, that was a great concert. That was a great play. That was a great show. Or even at the movie, you're blown away. And you are seeing the finish line, the performance, what happens when the curtain goes up. You have not seen all the hard work, the mistakes, the blocking, the investment, months and months, and sometimes years that brought them to that point. So you're right. It's the daily stuff, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Chris talked about it too. He said, you can have those opportunities where you book the room at the Ritz and you have champagne and you're in the jacuzzi and the hands by the beach. He goes, and that's great. That's great. But the ultimate reason, he says, while people are not really passionate sex, because they're fundamentally not in to their partner, right? Yeah. They think it's just supposed to happen. And, we're talking about sex and we're talking about intimacy, Kim. And, one of the things that I think Chris mentioned, he said, you know what, sometimes it's going to be, your intimacy is going to be great for you. Sometimes it's going to be great for your partner. And sometimes it's going to be great for the two of you, but it's varied and it's different. And I think that one of the false expectations that couples have about sex and about intimacy is that it is going to be, rainbow, sunshine, the clouds parting, the birds flying and angels singing. And it
is for...
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is.
For the very beginning stages, right? That's when everything is incredible. But when you get a year into it, and then how about 50 years, right? I mean, this is the goal of our relationship, to be able to commit to 50 years at least, hopefully longer, right?
Right.
How do we keep that passion and that desire going for each other? We're not talking about the sex part of it. We're talking about that day-to-day desire that we have for each other. It's really hard to do.
It is. Love and the passion, right? The passion's got to be ongoing.
Yeah.
Are you tired of feeling like you're living with a roommate instead of a lover? Do you miss the days when you were completely into each other, intellectually, emotionally, and physically? The truth is, many couples are struggling behind closed doors. Putting on a brave face for the rest of the world is exhausting. If you want to get back your joy, return to thriving, and take pleasure in your marriage, then Kickass Couples Coaching and Matthew P. Hoffman are here to help. Join us alone or with your partner and start taking steps towards overcoming the pain-filled obstacles and improving your relationship right now. For a limited time, we're offering a free relationship assessment call. Go to MatthewPHoffman.com/coaching to book your free call now, so you can start making real changes in your most important relationship today.
So how do we stay? We buy new cars and we buy new clothes all the time. We are people who really like to do things for ourselves. We get into the habit of doing things for ourselves. But when we're talking about relationships, we're not talking about just us, right? We're thinking about our spouse and their needs and what we can do for them. And we don't live in that regard, Chris said, but we need to figure out how we can do that in order to have a successful, intimate relationship.
Right. And, he talked about that new car, that fresh car smell. We all love new, shiny, and exciting. And there's nothing wrong with that, but those are things, he goes, look, you can go to a bar, you can meet somebody, you can swing from chandeliers. You think it's wild and crazy, and that's the excitement you should have all the time. But that's Hollywood, that's movies, that's TV, that's porn. Those are all the things that look great. And you think it's going to always be like that. But at the end of the day, he said, you're not going to feel really good about yourself, right? Because his argument is that when he's committing to something larger than himself, larger than me, this marriage relationships I'm doing every day, I'm getting the work in, I'm having the discipline to commit, turning towards and making all that stuff work, then the passionate sex is an outcome of that work, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So passion and fulfillment. This is my next big takeaway. Passion and fulfillment in your relationship come out of commitment. They don't come out of the crazy, short-lived, wild things. Those are fun, and you can and should have them in your relationship. But you're going to get there by the backstory, the back work, the investment that you're making, and those things will be the fruit or the outcome from your commitment.
Yeah.
Some people think commitment, Kim, is a straitjacket, and I don't want to feel tied down in one person. And no, commitment is freeing. And I think what Chris is saying, when we make that commitment, we're free to have that eyeball to eyeball, soul to soul, deep, passionate sex. He said, this is his quote, it's like two souls dancing.
Yeah.
And that's what you get.
That's a beautiful vision. And you know what? He said something that really hit me. It really hit home with me. He said that realizing that every single interaction we have with each other, that one or two things is going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm either going to turn into you and acknowledge you, or I'm going to turn away from you. Meaning I'm either going to add to our basis of trust, or I'm going to take away from it by however I reply to our interaction, or you reply. And that really hit me. So, really taking the time to recognizing when your partner's bidding for your attention and turning towards your partner is a practice that we all need to become good at.
No doubt. Yeah. Turning towards.
Don't turn away.
Turning towards means you're leaning in. You're getting close. You're asking the questions. You're opening
You're paying
up.
attention.
You're paying attention. You're not distracted.
No distractions.
No technology is pulling you away. And Kim, guys, men and women, when I say guys, that's an inclusive term. Correct there. When you are thinking about your performance and how you're showing up or your partners, Chris talks about the trend line. You are not going to be perfect all the time, but you've got to look. And I can say in my relationship, 90, 95% of the time, my wife, Kim, is showing up for me. She's doing the things she needs to be doing. She's trying to lean in. She's trying to turn towards. She's trying to walk in the doors that I open. So I have to look at her body of work, not an occurrence, not one thing, not one mistake, and certainly not something from the past. And so I want to kind of make everybody aware, you got to follow the trend line. Like you look at the graph of a year and you look at the line and you go, it's an upwards trend with some peaks and valleys, but generally we started here and we ended here. And that's what's important in your relationship. Don't swallow out the gnats. Don't strain out the gnats and swallow camels, meaning let the little stuff stay little and only focus your attention or your concern on the big things so you can look at their body of work and follow that trend line.
I asked Chris the question during our discussion, if you were to give somebody a roadmap on how to do all of this, how to really get to that truly desired place of true intimacy, what would that look like? And I think that, he had a great answer in that it is start the process early on and continue it out through your relation, that process of really getting to know your spouse, asking those deep questions, exploring, really, really working on your friendship together, knowing what your soulmates dreams and hopes and visions are.
And fears.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, all
What
that
frightens
stuff.
you? What are you afraid of? I think that really asking those deep questions and actively listening to the answers is how it works.
Kim and I got to share, I got to give a little personal story here. We were on a hike in Greenville where we moved to just a couple of years ago. Beautiful park, the falls. We sat on a bench facing the woods. I looked in her eyes and I said, I'm going to ask you these questions and you can ask me these questions. And I said, tell me about your biggest hope and dream that is on the top of your mind right now. She thought, wow, and she shared. And then I said, what are you most afraid of? And her answer, I was not aware of. I didn't know what her biggest fear was. And then we had that conversation. We had those connections, questions that we haven't asked each other in a while or maybe before, but it brought us closer together because I was aware of her inner world and she was more aware of mine. So when Chris is talking about that roadmap, asking questions, we're not just saying, oh, ask questions. You got to ask the right questions and ones that allow your partner to share deeply, emotionally, and spiritually about where they are.
And often, right? Because things change. What I might have been afraid of then, I might not be afraid of that now, but I may have a different fear on my mind or on my heart. And so I feel like you have to revisit those questions, not every day, but you have to revisit those questions on a regular basis because life changes and our circumstances change, and it's important to re-engage.
Are you struggling to maintain the emotional and physical intimacy you once shared? Do you feel like you're spending more energy finding fault and tearing your partner down instead of magnifying their good and building them up? Don't worry, you're not alone. Many couples are struggling behind a forced smile and an inauthentic happiness. You feel drained, unheard, and more often than not, unappreciated. The good news is it's not too late to rekindle the flame and strengthen your bond. I'm offering a free relationship assessment call to help you take the first step towards revitalizing your relationship and reaching your own relationship nirvana. Whether you come alone or with your partner, I'm here to help you create the space for a more fulfilling and satisfying relationship. Don't wait any longer. Make the changes you need to thrive. Book your free call today at matthewphoffman.com/coaching. And let's get started on your journey to a kick-ass relationship. Yeah, it's not Ronco said it, forget it. Oh, I asked her that when we got married,
Right,
And,
exactly.
we got to revisit, and that's
Gotta
true.
love that answer.
That's true. Another big takeaway that I had, and I'm going to relate this to a little TLC song. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Chris said that you've got to have conversations about sex and intimacy, meaning more questions. Here we come. More questions. What do you like? What don't you like? What are you willing to do? What are you absolutely not willing to do? What is pleasurable for you? What's something that you like to try that we've never done? He said, couples need to sit down and have open, honest discussions about sexuality, their fantasies, their desires, whatever it may be. And then just because they tell you doesn't mean it's your job to fulfill it all, because you got to be willing to set boundaries and go, ooh, I'm not dressing up and doing that, right? If there's something you're not comfortable with, saying, wow, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'm comfortable with this. I'm not comfortable with that. Or maybe you're going to have to help me here a little bit. But he said, there's some cultural, sometimes I know the Latinos or Hispanic are more open in doing that. He goes, but in United States, for most people, they don't have those conversations.
Yeah, for some reason we think it's taboo and that it's not something we're supposed to talk about or should talk about, when in fact that's the very opposite. We really need to have we need to go deep. We need to have those very intimate questions within each other and within our relationship, and knowing we feel safe in that space to ask those questions,
to trust, to say, there are conversations that we've not had in our relationship that are new just in the last 5 or 6 years. We're working on year 29 and we're late to the game. We just got to having some of those conversations about because of those sensitive or taboo or there's social mores around, you can't talk like that, you can't share these things. I think each couple has to figure out. Our whole premise is you got to have the conversations to talk about what works for you and your relationship, and kind of ignore, if it's not illegal and it's not hurting somebody, then you can talk about what works for you and what gives you joy and pleasure and intentionality and fulfillment in your relationship. And that means to be individually, collectively, yourself and your partner. I mean,
when we're in a healthy relationship, we want to explore our sexuality to its fullest. Till its fullest. That's what we should be doing and should be desirous of doing together.
Yeah. And if there's hindrances, I got to put a caveat in there. If there's hindrances to you having wide open sex because of trauma, because of abuse, because of mental illness or difficulties in the past
experiences,
no doubt those things need to be talked about and maybe get help with that. And, women have experienced, as a rule, more sexual abuse than men. And we've had men on our show that have talked about that as children. And I have friends that have talked about that abuse and how it informed or affected them later in life. We're not making light of those things, and those things need to be addressed. And Chris would be the first one. He said, hey, if you need help, you got to get help, because if it's an obstacle in your relationship, wouldn't it be nice to get rid of it? And sometimes that involves outside help. So, God, Kim, we could go on and on and on.
One of my favorite topics.
We only took notes and brought you guys things today that came from about 2/3 of.
It was a fabulous interview, and he had so many great things to say.
Lots of great takeaways
about, really true red hot intimacy. And so I hope you will go back and listen to the interview in its entirety. So there's a lot of fruit there.
Yeah, if that's what you want to have red hot intimacy, listen to the episode. Check out this recap. If you got anything good out of that episode with Chris Cambas and Kim and I, or today in this recap episode, not only give us a like, but give us a review. We want to know what you want to hear and what you like.
Absolutely.
And the best way for us to do a better job of that, give us a review and give us a scorecard and let us know how we're doing.
Thanks, everybody, for listening in today. And remember that happily ever after doesn't just happen. It's on purpose.
We'll see you guys out there.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.